I want to congratulate the organizers of this workshop and for what so far has been an excellent job, I'm advised, in the coordinating of this important initiative. I want to thank the President of the Caribbean branch of the International Council on Archives for the kind invitation to be part of this very important activity. My understanding is that this is the very first Caribbean Archives Digitization workshop, and this is being hosted by CABICA in conjunction with our own National Archives, headed by the illustrious Victoria of Lahati. So I want to congratulate all of you, and hopefully part of the message which will emanate from this workshop is that those who are involved in archives are doing more than storing books and other pieces of literature from a very long time. And that the notion of the archives as some add-on somewhere in government or in our community, that notion could be transformed among the national communities within our respective regions of the Caribbean. I think it's critically important that we are able to put into perspective what is the true function of national archives, how they add value to national discourse, but more importantly, how they add value to the development journey on which we as all people have to embark and have to take ownership of. And perhaps through the lines, the rhythms, and the poetry of what is captured and ought to be captured in our own national archives, we can find ways, as it were, to help anchor our people. Anchor them not so much to the past, but understanding, anchor them in an appropriate understanding of the context and the history which have all helped to shape our own development trajectory. I think it's critically important because yesterday, just off the blue, we were talking about places and sighting of places. And I was saying to someone, well, perhaps our National Archives could go to this particular location. And I kind of get the sense, well, why you want to put that there? You know, that is something that could go anywhere. They just need a little space somewhere. And I think basically that unless our people, though, get a true sense and sensing of how we position our national archives in the context of the challenges which we now face and the challenges which we have to surmount to achieve development, we are not going to be able to get the frontal position which Mrs. O'Flaherty and so many of you now hold as National Archivists in this particular function. I want on that note, though, to thank our Governor General, because as head of the nation, we have in him a man who is soberly anchored, not just in our history, but in a sense of the importance and imperative that we give due recognition and support, not only to our libraries, but to our national archives. And so it would have been surprising had he not been here today, because he has extended his patronage and his support over many decades to these kinds of development for the edifying value and worth which they bring to us as a people. So we have a very special friend, not just at the government, but at the very top of the state, because you would appreciate that his post is higher than mine. And so in having him, you have the support at the apex of the governmental structure of our Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis. And so we hope that we will be able to do something very well about this and to aid in the discussion and in the operationalization of the theme which has been adopted of preserving memories in a digital world. I want, as I bid you welcome, to also hope that you will have time to sample some of our more famous historical sites. Again, when you live within the jurisdictions, there's a tendency to take some of these things for granted. And that in part is due to where we are at in understanding and appreciating our history. That more meaning and more value are not given to these things. And yet we find now there is developing a body of visiting friends to our region who have a greater sense and appreciation for history and historical artifacts. And in several of our islands, perhaps the Spanish greater than in the English-speaking part of the Caribbean, there is this subset of tourists that are coming to have a historical experience. I want equally to commend the work of UNESCO, because UNESCO has done perhaps more than most in attempting to have us get a grounding about history and about the importance of preservation of historical artifacts. So for example, in Cuba, Havana, that old city is now a UNESCO heritage site. And we have seen significant works now being undertaken to make what one would have considered old Havana, and so much of Havana could have been described as old Havana, to bring some resurgence in the physical appeal of these structures. In that same vein that we have to appreciate what is ours and understand our history and not dismiss much of what has happened, but to see what we can learn from that history to shape the future. Because life is a continuum. No present without a past, no future without a present. And we have to, as a people, be able to have that continuity exercise in our mind. And so, in our own context, Bloody Point here, in the western part of our island, is rich in history. And I gather way back, long before our times, the river flowed red for several days after being stained with the blood of thousands of Carib Indians who were massacred in 1626 or thereabout by the English and French settlers. Equally, as you go there, and hopefully some sense of an emotion may come to you, we would also want you to go see what for us is a must-see, the Brimstone Hill Fortress National Park. Brimstone Hill Fortress National Park is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and in our view, it is certainly one of the 7 wonders of the world. So if you come here, you really must go and see our national fortress. It was designed by British military engineers and constructed with the ingenuity and creativity of African slaves starting way back in 1690s or thereabout, and it wasn't completely built out until the 18th century, 1790s. In today's digital world, historians, journalists, and citizens in general could be seen documenting now for posterity similar events, using videos, photography, and tape recordings of witnesses. And in some respects, if we were Brimstone Hill, we would be recording not just the witnesses, but the victims of that process of interacculturation that has helped shape our history. Being a multi-year project, if we were today, we would see events being captured now through multimedia, documenting phase by phase, year by year, starting from groundbreaking to the auspicious ceremony leading to the opening. Stories would be written, ranging from news reports to personal accounts, posted on Facebook and other social media. Centuries back, the luxuries of these multiple forms of capturing information were not available. And so we owe a debt of gratitude to those who were able to have captured the richness of those activities and to have penned them in books that we now call our history books. We hope that as our people get more engaged in understanding how the present will shape the past, the present very rapidly become the past. And one author said, the past is my grandfather's curse. The present is a father's mischief, and only the future we have to consecrate. Part of the consecration of the future must be that we must empower the generation after us to have a better appreciation from whence we came and how we are going to be able to move forward. The digitization of multiple media format enables now a participatory, and some may say an inclusive approach to information consumption, information gathering and sharing. Digitization also protects historical documents for future generations by eliminating in part the repetitive handling of them and the attendant wear and tear. Importantly too, with digitization, our collective and personal understanding of national events and the national experience is no longer reliant on his story, but in fact, this understanding becomes informed by all of our stories. Indeed, these stories are made up of a richly diverse mosaic of emotion, of experiences, impressions, opinion, perspectives, and voices. Digitization properly utilized